Captain Mismis, who was bowing her head, holding her head as she faced a mountain of documents. In a room with a hexagonal table, each corner of the table was occupied by a member of the Mismis unit. Iska, who had just arrived, brought them soda, which the captain liked. Jin was puzzled as to why Iska brought bottled drinks instead of canned ones. Iska, surprised, replied to Jin that he hadn't thought about it, recalling how Alice had given him a bottled drink. The screen behind the captain suddenly lit up, and Riz's face appeared on the screen. She inquired about Mismis's whereabouts and asked if it would be a problem for Mismis to memorize a lot of material all at once. Unilaterally, Rizia changed the topic of conversation and requested Iska's presence at the Imperial Senate. The scene shifted to Iska in the Imperial Senate chamber, where they had been briefed about Iska, the Black Steel successor. They knew that Iska had fought against the Disaster Witch of Ice and managed to hold her back. They praised Iska for his achievements. However, Iska felt like a failure because he had failed to protect the reactor. The senators explained that Iska's mission was to stop the Disaster Witch of Ice, not to protect the reactor. The Empire had the power to deal with the Disaster Witch of Ice. As a result, his return as a saint was certain. They also understood Iska's determination to achieve peace and that, as a saint, he could gain the attention of the nobility. However, on the other hand, Iska was also a criminal within the Empire. Therefore, the Senate gave him a new mission, to capture the Ice Witch. After leaving the Senate chamber, Iska returned to his room and contemplated the mission he had received from the senators. Iska, who continued to think about it, then called Captain Mismis to ask for permission to skip training the next day because he needed to go to the neutral city to talk to someone. The captain, understanding Iska, granted permission with one condition. She would accompany Iska to the neutral city the next day. Iska was surprised to hear this, and in response, the captain asked him to look out the window. Iska's face tensed up, and the captain decided not to let any of her team members go alone in such a condition. Iska, once again taken aback by Captain Mismis, agreed to the condition she had set. The scene shifted to the tower where Alice lived. Alice, lost in thought and reminiscing about what had happened earlier, was startled by the sound of the door opening and Rin calling her. Rin came in with a document about the Imperial Sword Saint they had encountered. Alice, curious about the Imperial Sword Saint, asked Rin about him. The Imperial Sword Saint was a saint disciple and the youngest in history. He was one of the most talented sword saints the Empire had ever had. There was a reason Alice didn't know about him. After his promotion, he never went to the battlefield, which eventually led to his promotion being revoked, and he was imprisoned. Alice, intrigued, asked why he was imprisoned. Rin didn't want to explain in detail. She simply handed the document she was holding to Alice. When Alice received the document and read it, she was shocked. The document stated that the reason the Sword Saint had been imprisoned was that he had released a spirit witch imprisoned by the Empire. Alice, growing more curious, asked Rin to find the spirit witch he had set free. Rin bid farewell after receiving Alice's request. After Rin left her alone, Alice took the handkerchief she had received from Iska while watching the opera. Lost in thought as she looked at the handkerchief, Alice was startled by her mother's voice saying that it seemed like Alice was very interested in enemy soldiers. Her mother, standing at the bedroom door, walked in, stating that the Empire was their enemy. She described the Empire as a nation filled with people who hated and persecuted them, referring to them as witches. The Empire treated them with nothing but cruel witch hunts, leading to many spirit witches becoming victims of the Empire's brutality. Overthrowing the Empire was the greatest goal for witches like them. Even artists from the Empire were merely pawns of the Empire. Alice could only listen in silence. After conveying this, her mother left the room. Realizing that Rin had eavesdropped on the conversation from behind the bedroom door, Alice called her in and asked her to get ready to go to the capital the next day. Rin expressed her opposition to Alice's decision, but Alice firmly stated that her goal was to meet Iska and find out his true intentions. The day they had been waiting for arrived, and Iska, along with the captain, was traveling in a car to the neutral city with the captain driving. The captain asked Iska to tell her who he had promised to meet. Iska, feeling a bit anxious, said that he wasn't making promises to anyone. However, despite never believing in fate, Iska felt that they would meet at this moment. Iska explained that there was something he needed to make sure of when they met. The journey continued with an albatross bird flying above their car. Such birds were scarce in the Empire. After seeing the bird, Iska asked the captain to drive to the entrance and stop there. The scene shifted to Iska already in the city, walking towards the fountain where he had met Alice the day before. Alice, who had arrived earlier, then greeted Iska. Curious about the woman standing beside Iska, Alice asked him about her, and Iska introduced Mismis to Alice. Seeing Mismis confused, Alice introduced herself as the disaster witch of ice to the captain. Upon hearing this, Mismis was surprised and immediately took refuge behind Iska, drawing even more attention from the people around them. Not wanting to attract any more attention, Alice asked them to move from that spot. Alice and the others moved to a place where there were no people around, outside the walls of Neutral City. Alice, puzzled by why they hated each other when there was a peaceful city like this, continued by asking why Iska had saved one of the spirit witches held captive by the Empire a year ago. The reason he did that was because the one he saved was a young spirit witch with weak spirit powers, but the Empire wanted to capture all spirit witches regardless of that, and Iska didn't like that. Alice felt that it was contradictory since she was trying to capture him when they were in the Nelka forest. Iska fell silent and answered that what he was doing was for the sake of peace. He wanted to stop the war, but the Empire and sovereignty were not willing to act based on anything Iska said. So Iska planned to take the direct descendant of Nebulis hostage, a powerful spirit witch and a pureblood. He believed that if nobles were in danger, the Nebulis sovereignty would be disturbed, forcing them to respond to peace negotiations. However, Alice denied everything. Even if she were taken hostage, it wouldn't change anything and negotiations would never happen. This was because so many people in the sovereignty hated the Empire. Her encounter with Iska made Alice realize that there were people in the Empire like him who fought to end the war. On the other hand, Alice slowly started to understand him, and she continued by asking Iska to serve her. Hearing this, Rin was surprised because it wasn't part of their previous discussion, and she objected to this crazy idea. However, Alice, confident in her decision, asked Rin to be quiet and proceeded to make an offer to Iska. Captain Mismis, witnessing this, became worried about Iska and was shocked when the ground started to tremble around them. The intense ground shaking was accompanied by cracks forming in the sky, and a pale-faced woman surrounded by a dark aura emerged from the rift in the sky. Nebulis, that's what Alice muttered, shocked by what was happening before her eyes. The tense atmosphere hung right in front of them, accompanied by Nebulis's declaration that the Empire was the one destroying this world with its spirit power and intentions to annihilate everything. Nebulis then raised her hand, conjured a magic sphere, and launched it toward Alice and the others. The resulting explosion was so powerful that it caused shockwaves that reached the sovereignty. Every spirit power in the sovereignty reacted, leaving Alice's mother astonished, wondering what was happening. In a hurry, she looked at where Nebulis had been sealed. After arriving at the scene, she was surprised to find Nebulis no longer there. However, this was a good sign for her, as her dream was coming true, signifying that the Empire's defeat was imminent. Nebulis's powerful attack caught Iska and the others off guard. Iska, the one who managed to survive, stood up and saw his captain unconscious due to the attack. Shortly after, Rin and Alice also regained consciousness. Iska, feeling frustrated, tried to ask why Nebulis was attacking their own friends, Rin and Alice. Alice then explained that it was due to the spirit power defense system, and she didn't know what triggered it. Alice had been experiencing strange feelings since she met Iska in Neutral City, but as the sovereignty's princess, she couldn't let those feelings take over. So she came to resolve the issue alone without involving others. However, Nebulis appeared to enjoy the chaos caused by all the sovereignty's residents, which infuriated Alice. She ran towards Nebulis and asked her to stop everything. Nebulis, feeling underestimated by the spirit witch cooperating with the Empire, unleashed her power to attack Alice. Rin, who saw this, didn't stand idly by. She summoned her golem to protect Alice from Nebulis's attack. Nebulis's assault overwhelmed Rin, causing her to lose consciousness. Alice, panicking, rushed to Rin, followed by Iska and the awakened captain. Iska calmly asked Alice to cool down Rin's body and requested the captain to take Rin to the hospital. He also asked the captain to inform the residents to evacuate from the area. Iska walked towards Nebulis, drawing both of his swords, with Alice behind him, ready to face her. When Nebulis saw Iska's two swords, it reminded her of Crosswhale, who had been Iska's mentor. Without hesitation, she unleashed her spirit power and attacked Iska and Alice, but they easily parried her assault. Seeing the Spirit Witch and the Imperial soldiers working together, Nebulis realized she had no mercy for them both. She then unleashed even greater power, but it was once again restrained, this time by Alice's ice magic. Alice firmly stated that Nebulis was no longer needed, and her actions had become meaningless. The future that Alice and Iska were seeking could no longer be found within Nebulis. Both of them requested her to go to sleep once again. Alice and Iska ran towards where Nebulis was located. Nebulis spread her wings and attacked Alice and Iska with her fiery power, but they easily evaded it. This was followed by attacks of ice and earth spirits directed at them. Alice, wanting to intercept the attack, asked Iska to jump. With her immense power, Nebulis then attacked them with her wind spirits. Iska planted his sword into the frozen ground to maintain his position, but Alice, unable to hold on, was pushed back. Realizing this, Iska reached out his hand to grasp Alice's. Holding Alice's hand tightly, Iska said that he shared the same goal as her. His words melted Alice's heart, and she placed her trust in him. Alice then stood behind Iska and unleashed one of her techniques to attack Nebulis. Realizing she was about to be attacked, Nebulis canceled her wind attack and turned it into a wind shield to protect herself, pushing her back slightly. Iska then ran towards Nebulis, and without hesitation, she attacked Alice again, sending her flying from her position. Iska continued to sprint, and seeing the attack coming his way, he deflected it with his sword. He then turned towards Alice, who had gotten up, and used her as a stepping stone to approach Nebulis. Seeing this, Nebulis launched a spear of fire towards Iska. While running, Iska deflected Nebulis's attack with Alice's impenetrable shield technique. Seeing that her attack had no effect, Nebulis was shocked, and without a chance to evade, she received Iska's attack, which severed both of her wings, causing her to fall back into the dimensional rift she had created. The clear sky signaled the end of the battle. An orange-colored light emerged from the western horizon. After the intense battle they had gone through together, Iska refused Alice's offer to switch sides to Nebulis. Despite the challenging fight they had endured side by side, they would remain enemies.